What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin' Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by this guy, this great guy, Tom. Tom, how are you today, bro?
Wow, what an intro. Like, you really brought out the red carpet for me this morning. I appreciate it, Keith. Thank you. I know you had some car troubles that were plaguing you in the AM. So happy to be here. Let's talk about Tony Ferguson real quick before we jump into Rakic versus Jan Blachowicz. Hey, Tony Ferguson, talk about comeback of the century. First round, won it, I think, on almost everybody's scorecards. I know at the end, Michael Chandler ended up on top, but he was getting sliced open by Tony's elbows. He has razor blades on those things. Maybe he should be razor blades instead of Curtis blades. But at the end of the day, he got caught by that amazing up kick from your guy Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler went on to have probably one of the top 5 best post-fight Joe Rogan interviews following that. I mean, it was great. Now they're talking about a fight between him and Nate Diaz, which would be electric, absolutely. So yeah, but for Tony Ferguson, I mean, it was painful to watch him go down. I think earlier in his career, he doesn't get hit by that kick. Maybe that kick does knock him out earlier in his career too, because it was just absolutely vicious. That was like a 50-yard field goal. But at the end of the day, for Tony, he looked so hurt walking out of the cage, especially when Chuck Liddell hugged him and he just had that like blank stare face, couldn't believe what happened, if he even knew where he was after such a vicious shot to the chin. But then, like yesterday, he went on Twitter and he's being typical old Tony, having fun again. And he's, proud of how he went out in the first round. And he goes, "Hey, happens to everybody. I got caught. At least we went out there and we fought." Like, I think I think it was like Dustin Poirier, or it was to somebody where he's like, "You're not even fighting often. Like, I went out there, I fought, and I had a great first round. Hey, I got caught. What are you gonna do? I'm 38. Let's go. Let's fight here. Champ shit only." Like, it was just a great comeback to see from Tony Ferguson, and I can't wait to see him, what he does next. I think he has to take a lot of time off, but the fans are always going to rally for Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, absolutely. As a Michael Chandler fan, I was really happy to see that knockout. Anybody that's been following us for a while knows that I love Michael Chandler, but it's also sad to see that happen to Tony. It was a little heartbreaking. My personal pick was actually Michael Chandler to win by a decision because you never expect Tony Ferguson to get knocked out like that. But with that being said, Michael Chandler, yeah, he cut that great promo, and actually the person that he was that Tony Ferguson was beefing with on Twitter afterwards was McGregor, because he was saying that Tony Ferguson got made look like a chicken nugget in that still photo where his face, it looks like his skull is about to leave his skin. And then Tony Ferguson came back around and was like, "All right, then McNuggets, we'll go at it." So I think it's yeah, you can make that Michael Chandler Nate Diaz fight. You can make a Michael Chandler Conor McGregor fight, or I think on the flip side, you could put Tony Ferguson in against either one of those guys. Those are great fights all around to make. You have those 4 guys that you can really just mix and match in there. And I think it makes for great future fights. What would you think about a Tony Ferguson Nate Diaz matchup?
Well, that would be interesting because both guys are jiu-jitsu specialists. Both guys are accomplished on the feet. I would want to see how tall and the length difference between Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz. But I think that could potentially be a fun fight, especially considering all the shit talk. They both like to talk shit. They're both real. I mean, Tony's as real as you can get. I mean, he's definitely messed up in the head, and the biggest Tony fan in the world will tell you that. But that's why everybody loves him. He's just so interesting. You never know what he's going to say. He's unpredictable, and his fights are fun. He's cutting people up with elbows. I mean, his pre-fight thing where he's just most people, they just throw hooks or whatever. He's in there throwing elbows at the camera. It's awesome. I think his whole look of El Kukui and his weird odd long arms. I don't anticipate too much ground game going on there, because both guys really like to play the jiu-jitsu game from their back. So it would be a really interesting stylistic matchup, because when you think about it, Tony's awkward on the feet. Nate he's Nate on the feet. I mean, he throws the long jabs. He'll take punches. Both guys, at least up until we saw recently with Tony Ferguson, they have incredible chins. I don't know if Nate has any power that would replicate what Michael Chandler kicked Tony Ferguson with. So with all that being said, that actually would be a really, really good matchup. I know Tony has to be out for quite some time. So, and Nate's itching to fight right now. So I think that couldn't be the fight that we would have to do right now. But hey, maybe if Nate goes out there, has a fun fight with, the likes of Michael Chandler, maybe loses, Nate will never get, I mean, I can't say that. Nate may get released from the UFC. I think that's what Nate wants. But and this is Nate's last fight, so who knows if he's even willing to re-sign with the UFC. Actually, he may have re-signed. He may not have re-signed. I think I'm vaguely remembering some chatter potentially about that, like his attitude changed. But you never know. Like Nate Diaz, his opinion changes like the wind as far as his relationship with the UFC. I know he's not a fan, but his willingness to fight or be released, all of that changes, with the weather. So I'd be really interested to see. But I think Nate Diaz, if he's gonna fight for the UFC, he wants to fight soon. If he fights, again, re-ups, has another fight, scheduled, I think Tony Ferguson would be a great matchup. I think they got to give Tony, some considerable time off.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And for me, being a Michael Chandler fan, I really want him to step in there and get McGregor like he asked for. I think the payday for him is well deserved at this point. He's been a long time guy in this game. He had wars at Bellator, and obviously Bellator, at that time wasn't really like the highest paying promotion either. So I think Michael Chandler definitely deserves a McGregor payday, a potential, maybe even a main event or a co-main. I don't know if McGregor would settle for anything less than a main event. And then Tony and Nate just makes for a fun old guys fight. You and I have spoken about, how there's a potential for just an old guys league, a legends league, something like that. And I feel like that would be a fun matchup for that. Because I don't think either of those guys have championship hopes, anytime near in their future. But with all that being said, I feel like we can jump into our prelim locks for this week. What do you think?
Yeah, let's hear it. Go.
Right.
I'll send it over to you first, and then I'll follow up.
So speaking of Nate Diaz, we've actually got a Nate Diaz prospect opening up this the prelims for what is UFC Fight Night, Blachowicz versus Rakic, and that Nate Diaz, prospect or prodigy is Nick Maximov, and he's a -350 favorite in this one. Great jiu-jitsu guy, follows suit from Nate Diaz. And he actually regularly competes in Brazilian jiu-jitsu competitions, jiu-jitsu competitions. Submission Underground is a regular appearance for him. And he's also got pretty decent striking, too. He's got a nice Nate Diaz-esque snap-type jab. Makes use of a long reach. He uses a lot of front kicks. He keeps distance really well using that jab and front kicks. He does look a little bit awkward like Nate on his feet. He's not the best striker, but he uses what he has well. He's also young. He's going to have the age advantage here. He's coming in at 25. So I think, based on the style of Maximov and the way that he does use his stand-up, I actually like him to win this one by decision. I think that's a pretty smart pick in this one, coming over Andre Petrosky, who, we know who Andre is. He's been at this for a while. But yeah, I really like the Nick Maximov pick and sweeten those -350 lines by taking him to win by decision. He is typically a decision fighter, and Andre Petrosky is not the type to really get submitted or get knocked out by a Nick Maximov guy. So I'll flip it over to you. What do you think of that? And then what's your next prelim lock?
So interesting development. I have to run to work right now. So, Keith, I'm going to leave this up to you. Real quick, my picks are going to be, without much explanation, Nick Maximov for a lot of the reasons that you explained. I don't think Andre Petrosky has as much skill as he has. Tatsuro Taira, he's a guy who's coming to the UFC with a long background of really exciting fights, and they want him to win. Angela Hill over Vina Jandiroba. Angela Hill is just a better quality striker, and they match up well on the ground. Also taking that to go to decision. I like Andrea Lee over Viviane Arajau, but mainly I'm taking that one to go to decision. I like Manuel Torres over Frank Camacho because Frank Camacho is very chinny. I like Caitlin Chukagian because of her long and her reach advantage over Amanda Hebos, but that could really go either way. Take that one by decision. I'm going Davey Grant over Louis Smolka because of Davey Grant's power and his less question marks. Louis Smoke has a lot of question marks. I'm going Jan Cutelaba because I love the Hulk. It's a Superman versus the Hulk, a really interesting matchup. Jan Cutelaba. And I am going, regrettably, Alekesander Rakic over Jan Blachowicz. I think he has a really good leg kick. I think it'll slow down Jan Blachowicz. I think his jiu-jitsu is really, really good. And Jan Blachowicz is solid ground game, but I don't know if it's solid enough. So with all that being said, I got to run. Have fun on the rest of the video. Sorry to leave you hanging like that, Keith, but work calls.
All right, sorry to see you go. Yeah, that means I just have to be that much more entertaining now. And I do agree with a lot of Tom's picks there. I'm going to add in a few. I'm actually taking Andrea Lee over Viviane Araujo. Both stand-up fighters. You know, they do very similar things very well. But I think that Andrea KGB Lee has a lot more in her arsenal. She uses her kicks a lot more effectively, whereas Araujo is a little bit more of a boxer. Andrea Lee also has really good fight IQ and actually decent jiu-jitsu. She got a win over Antonina Shevchenko with an armbar. So if something does happen where she happens to drop Viviane Araujo, which I don't really think is super likely, but if that does happen, you know, I'd expect her to, rather than try and ground and pound her out, you know, drop down to the ground, try and lock up another armbar. That seems to be her bread and butter submission right there if she goes for one. And another thing to look at with Andrea Lee, she's got better cardio and attacks the body of her opponents with really heavy kicks, you know, and that depletes their cardio. So I like Andrea Lee to win that one by decision. I'm taking Jake Hadley in his fight. That's the end of my prelim locks, by the way. We're moving on up to the main card. So Jake Hadley is another one of these European guys that we're seeing come through Cage Warriors and the Contender Series. And they've been giving these Contender Series guys really hard debut fights. And this is no exception because Alan Nascimento is a guy that's been around for a little while. He's fought some good competition. And he actually comes out of the same shoot to box gym as Charles Oliveira, the shoot to box gym run by Diego Lima. I think this is going to be a highly competitive fight. And I see a lot of people taking Jake Hadley in this one. But personally, I have to go against the grain here a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit of bias towards those or with those shoot-to-box guys. But, you know, and you do look at Jake Hadley, right? He does have, like I said, the youth advantage, better competition because they did not pad his record when he was fighting over in Europe. And talent, Jake Hadley is very talented. But being that Alan Nascimento is a live dog in this fight, and shout out to our boy in Fuego, fighters making their UFC debut in 2020 or 2022, I'm sorry, are 17 and 26. I think that out of the guys making their debut on this card, I think Jake Hadley is going to be the one to lose it. I think it's going to be a highly entertaining, highly competitive fight. But this guy Nascimento has a lot of answers for what Jake Hadley does, and he's got experience, and he's got some incredible training partners there over at Shoot to Box. So on the flip side of that, I'm actually going to be taking someone making their UFC debut, and that is Manuel Torres over Frank Camacho. And that's because Camacho has been extremely inactive. He hasn't fought since June of 2020. He has a history of KOs against pretty decent opponents, and he's made guys look really good that shouldn't be made to look like that. I think this is a bad matchup for Camacho against Manuel Torres, who has heavy hands and can make use of Camacho's weak chin. He's active as opposed to Camacho. And, you know, when you've been out for a while, it can be really tough to get your bearings. There is a thing called ring rust. We've spoken about this quite a lot, or octagon rust in this case. And, you know, it's tough to get your bearings from the jump against a guy like Manuel Torres, who is a really fast starter. He's go, go, go from the second that the fight goes, from it opens. And so I like Torres by knockout in this one. So then we're moving on up to Caitlin Chookagian versus Amanda Ribas. And I don't think that Caitlin Chookagian gets a lot of the respect that she deserves. She's a really smart fighter, and she knows how to win by decision, unlike the strawweight championship fight last weekend. But, you know, she constantly outlands her opponents. constantly striking and kicking. She stays very active as the fight goes on. Nothing is really thrown to kill, but it's thrown to rack up the points and keep her ahead on the judges' scorecards. She doesn't miss a lot. She's super accurate, and she's got the range in this fight too, especially. She got a longer reach, and she's got significantly longer legs. So all those kicks, she used a lot of front kicks, teep kicks, a lot of leg kicks. That's going to help her out here because she's got the longer legs. She's 5'9" over Amanda Ribas, who I'm seeing listed at 5'3" a lot of places. So I think that she's going to pick apart Ribas and keep her at range. She's going to outstrike her. She's not really going to let Amanda Ribas land a lot, whereas Chookagian is going to just blow the striking numbers through the roof on the other end. So I have Katlyn Chookagian to win this one by decision. And like Tom said, Louis Smolka, a lot of questions about him. There's like this middle range of unranked bantamweights that, they're good. They're just not ranked, but they're not really bad either. And Louis Smolka's at the bottom of that range. Like Tom said, a lot of questions about the guy, but he's coming off a knockout, bad loss. And despite Davey Grant coming off of 2 losses, there were close decisions, one of them being a split decision. And so that doesn't really indicate to me a lot about Davey Grant. Those guys were a little bit of a step up in competition. Louis Smolka is a little bit of a step down. Davey Grant can stand and trade with Smolka and potentially knock him out. He can go to the ground with him and choke him out. He has a series of weapons that he can definitely use against Louis Smolka. And we've seen recently that Louis Smolka can get beat in all sorts of different ways, right? Like he had that knockout to Justin James. He had a one-arm guillotine choke loss to Casey Kenny. So Louis Smolka, he's not that guy. He's not that guy, pal. Whereas Davey Grant, he's got a really complete game. Davey Grant's tough. He knows he needs a win, and he's definitely not going to let the judges interfere with that this time around. And then we've got Ryan Spann versus Jan Cutelaba. Now, this is actually one that I was going to try and talk this out a little bit with Tom and try to come to a decision here live on air. But instead, I'm just going to have to pick one. And so I'm going with Jan Cutelaba here. I think Jan Cutelaba is a really tough guy. He's got a lot more ways to win. He can go to the ground and, he can ground and pound Ryan Spann. He can, take advantage of better positions with him. But I think ultimately what's going to happen is Ryan Spann isn't going to be prepared for the Hulk, this guy that paints himself green and walks out. Jan Cutelaba is an absolute freak. Heavy hands, great takedowns. And Ryan Spann isn't a bad guy at all, but Jan Cutelaba doesn't really get chinned as often as him. He did get chinned by Magomed Ankalaev twice, I believe, but Magomed Ankalaev is up there at the top of this division. Ryan Spann has losses to some guys that are starting to middle out at this point, like Johnny Walker, Anthony Smith, guys that had their heyday, but he didn't lose them in their heyday. And I think Jan Cutelaba is one of those guys that's constantly improving. He starts to look a little bit better with each fight. I think this is going to be a big knockout for him as the co-main event. Either way, this fight's going to end in a knockout. So if you're just the type of person that likes to pick methods, overall, I think that the knockout is a really smart one because Ryan Spann does have heavy hands. But I like Jan Cutelaba to start to mix things up later in the fight, show Ryan Spann a few takedowns, a couple of level changes, and then eventually, just confuse him and land an overhand that knocks out Ryan Spann. So now we're on to the main event. We've got Jan Blachowicz versus Alekesander Rakic. And I'm going to have to go with Tom on this one. And it sucks because I am a Jan Blachowicz fan. But Alekesander Rakic, like Tom said, he has really great leg kicks. And there were a lot of things that we saw Israel Adesanya do against Jan Blachowicz early in their fight that, Alekesander Rakic does them. He doesn't do them as swiftly or as gracefully, but he does them with more power. Like Tom said, he has incredible leg kicks that they can really hurt somebody. I believe it was Anthony Smith we saw just get demolished by Alekesander Rakic's leg kicks to the point where he's not moving the same anymore. And, it also has to do with the timing as well as the power. Alekesander Rakic isn't really the most exciting guy, and the other thing to look at too is the fact that he's wanted this Jan Blachowicz fight when Jan Blachowicz was the champion. Now that he's not, it's a title contender fight. Whoever is going to get the winner of Glover versus Yuri probably wins this one. Is probably the winner of this one. But Alekesander Rakic has been looking at Jan Blachowicz for a long time and training for this specific opponent. And I think that Jan Blachowicz losing the belt probably is what got Alekesander Rakic that fight, because Yuri was next up to it anyway. So I think that this is a ready Alekesander Rakic with a really smart game plan. He doesn't really try to finish anybody. Like, he doesn't try to be super entertaining. When he's in there and he knows he's winning a round, not that he coasts, but he just continues doing what he's doing. He doesn't do anything overly aggressive, which against a guy like Jan Blachowicz, who, we saw a couple of years ago against Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson gets a little bit aggressive when he senses he's winning, and Jan Blachowicz just puts him right to sleep. So I think this is going to be a really smart Alekesander Rakic, who has seen a lot from Jan Blachowicz and is probably going to get the win, I think, by decision. Just based on all the things that he does really well. Heavy strikes, heavy leg kicks, intelligence. And not that Jan Blachowicz doesn't have those, but in a way, I almost feel like Jan Blachowicz was exposed against Glover Teixeira, which sucks. But, I think Alekesander Rakic and Yuri Prochazka are like these next evolution in the light heavyweight for the UFC. So I'm taking Alekesander Rakic. Just to run down my picks one more time. Taking Nick Maximov to win by decision. Taking Andrea Lee to win by decision. I'm leaning towards Alan Nascimento, sorry. But also, my Twitter handle is right here. So make sure that you follow me up there. And the day of the fight, typically I post a blog with my final favorite picks. I'll lead you in one way or the other. So that'll be where I give my updates for my picks. So I'm leaning towards Alan Nascimento. And I am taking Manuel Torres against Frank Camacho. Taking Caitlin Chookagian to win by decision. I'm taking Davey Grant against Louis Smolka. I'm taking Jan Cutelaba against Ryan Spann. And I'm taking Alekesander Rakic against Jan Blachowicz. If you stuck through this whole video, I know it was a little bit shorter today, and I really, I feel bad that Tom had to go, because I know he was super prepared for this one with a lot of great stuff to say. But in the future, when he's around, which will be next week probably, without a doubt, actually, tune in on YouTube at Pickin Winners. at _ Pickin Winners on Twitter, Instagram, Pickin Winners on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, follow our socials. Follow Tom at Pickin Fights Tom. Check out all the stuff that he does with Overtime Heroics. Check out the stuff that we do with menoforder.com, as well as we just started a lacrosse show. We have Tyler and Mikey. They are doing Pickin Corners. They just had an episode for Selection Sunday, which was great. It was so entertaining, and I never thought in my entire life I'd be interested in college lacrosse. And somehow those two guys have found a way to get me in there. So make sure you're checking that out. And if you are interested in contributing to Pickin Winners, let us know. Slide in our DMs. We'd be interested to hear you out. If you have an angle or a sport that we don't cover, we'd definitely be interested. So thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, comment, leave us questions in the future, and have a great day.